right, we are live on the internet. I'm doing formal interviews, so I figured I'd bring out my floral patterns. It's important. This is big deal stuff. I'm fortunate to have worked in the past and have gotten to know this guy, and he's legit and hugely intelligent, so wanted to bring him on here about breathing. And so let me introduce Colin. How are you, man? Colin Clayton of eightfoldhealth.com.au. Thanks for taking the time out to have a chat, man.
Pleasure, bro. I'm a fan of your stuff, so it's just like it's awesome to be here. Oh, yeah.
I dig the slight American accent too, man. Well played.
Ser- Seriously, dude, I am a fan of what you're doing because you're getting really good ground roots, solid information out there in a space where there is a bunch of stuff flying around. It's let's say questionable. And when I look at your posts and when I watch your stuff, I'm just like, thank God, you're talking sense.
I'm flattered, man. I'm totally flattered. A little blush. No, I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to have you here. And I know you know your stuff. I've been to some of one of your seminars before in Sydney, and I've seen your work for a while and how it's unfolded. And you've done some rad stuff. So figured we'd come out and talk about breathing. So give me the 3-minute lowdown. Who is Colin Clayton? What does he do? What is his purpose here in the world?
Hmm. Well, you know, it's an interesting question, and it's not a straight up answer because I guess maybe because I'm still finding that out too in myself, which is part of what I do with people. So I label myself as a peak performance coach, but my angle into that is around the breath and breathing. So there's two types of people I work with. One is kids, okay? And kids are super important to get their breathing right, and I'll tell you later on if it comes up some of the changes we've had in kids' performance. So that's one aspect of what I do. And the other aspect of what I do is coaching. So I don't like to use the word life coaching because I don't really think it is that. But basically, it's a coaching dynamic where we use breathing as kind of the foundation point, and then basically bring people from where they are to where they want to be. And that might use a range of things from, I was just talking to a client about art, and going through art stuff, or it could be some transfers. It could be journey work. It could be coaching around specific health stuff, like food allergies or whatever. It could be referring on to other people, or it could be just working with, mental blocks, impossibility walls, stuff like that, where they can't see, what they're saying. Is like shine a light on that and go, oh wow, I don't have to be with that. And guess what? When you do that, their breathing changes, right? And so you can manipulate at both ends. Well, not manipulate's the wrong word, but you can work with the person on both ends. So that's what I do. And I mostly work remotely, mostly on Skype.
It's cool. The ways of the internet to be able to access a whole lot of different people. Um, you said something I think really relevant. Using breath is a foundation for what you do with people. And you and I have some similar educational backgrounds, and we're both acutely aware of the influence and the impact and the importance of breathing. For those folks that have no idea, they've never even considered breath before, why is breath so important to, health and physiology?
Yeah, right on. And a lot of people would say that, like when they say, what do I do? I say I work with people's breathing, and they go, yeah, but like people breathe anyway, right?
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, but we know this, we've been through this. How long? But for the benefit of the people watching, oh, here we go. How long can we go without breathing for?
Not too long, man.
Yeah, it's like about 5 minutes, right? But if you can train your body to go longer, but the average person's 3 to 5 minutes. So the difference between living and dying is breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we got to drive for breathing basically because we want to keep our body oxygenated and our cells oxygenated and everything else. And that's the physiology behind it is oxygen uptake, okay, from the air. and also to get rid of, obviously, carbon dioxide out of the body, because carbon dioxide in the body is a poison. You don't want it to go too high, but you actually still want to maintain a right level of carbon dioxide. We can talk about that more later on, but the main purpose, or the way that I really look at it, is it's the breathing that connects me to life, to living. And therefore, the breathing is also a gateway to connect life to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
so when we improve our breathing, we improve our life. And in a way, this has been my experience. I know it sounds a bit probably freaking wacky and esoteric, but life actually starts improving us as well. Like, we start to get more opportunities. You start to see things differently the better you breathe. So from a surfing point of view, talking about bringing it back to surfing, like, I use surfing as kind of like a meditation for me. You know, like, there's so many aspects. I'm not a good surfer, and there's so many aspects to surfing that enable me to work on myself. And the more that I allow myself to breathe and breathe myself, the better and better I can access those things when I am surfing. So whether it be physiology, whether it be biochemistry, biomechanics, or even some of the mind stuff, like the psychophysical stuff that breathing can access, and that you can access through breathing as well.
I think that's massive. Again, like, so the influence on psychological impacts, physiologic impacts, biochemistry, and again, I'm all for the esoteric stuff. Like, when you're going through any type of health field work, it eventually, we're, like Paul Chek talks about, mental, spiritual, emotional, chemical kind of beings, right? And a breath is a huge way to quickly impact physiology, which could then impact psychological issues, digestive issues. To give somebody, again, from somebody that's got no idea about breathing and proper diaphragmatic breath, and what are a couple just common problems you see people having with breathing, and what downstream effects does that have on their physiology? Neck stuff, TMJ, digestive problems. Give it somebody some ideas of, like, how this relates to, their life, their pain.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, as you're aware as well, probably the most obvious thing is to have an inverted breathing pattern. Okay, so what that means is, with people watching, it's like, when you go to breathe, instead of using the muscles that you should be using, you use essentially what I call a backup system. So as we breathe, we mostly should be using our diaphragm. It sits down in the lower ribs, right? You've got your lungs attached to that, and as you breathe in, it contracts and flattens, pulls your lungs down, and your ribs go sideways as well. So that creates space down in here, inside the lungs, which creates a vacuum, which draws air in, and that's what we call breathing in. To breathe out, boom, the whole thing just springs back to where it came from. Now, that's cool when you're just sitting here, okay? Just say I'm working on the computer or I'm having a conversation, that's what's going on, okay? But if I paddle out, if I'm surfing or I'm doing any sort of sport, then clearly that amount of air is not enough. You need to, when you've got higher oxygen demands in your body because your muscles are working, you've got to breathe faster, you've got to get more air in and out. And of course then what happens is there's a whole complex series of muscles that are relatively active when you're doing diaphragm breathing, but then when you really get into it, they really take off and start pulling your ribs up. You're doing these ways, okay, as opposed to just sitting there and just doing one of those. So what happens is that system is what I call the backup system. Yeah, so it's kind of like having a backup generator. Yeah? So when you need extra power, boom, it kicks in and you start getting extra volume and air in and out of your body. But what happens is the backup system can become a primary system. And there's like Cole's law, This is my own personal law. When a backup system becomes a primary system, it creates a dysfunction. Okay.
Yes.
So what are some of the laws? Yeah, you like that law?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there's Chris's law. I guarantee that. This is law number one. When doing webinar, wear floral shirts.
Floral T-shirts, man. I'm seriously gonna make a habit of it, man. All right. So,
So what is
so
that?
yeah, get into it. So, um, Collins law. So some mechanical default happens. What is it?
That's it. So dysfunction. So the backup system becomes primary system. You get dysfunction, and as you know, but other people, you'd be surprised how common this is. And with the kids, it's like I would say 8 out of 10 kids I say have this problem.
And
And
the
it's
problem
scary
being,
because
they have an inverted breathing pattern. They're not
yeah,
efficiently
exactly.
utilizing their diaphragm at rest. Okay.
Yeah, they're using the backup system at rest instead of the primary system.
Hmm.
So what we have to do is re-educate that. But to answer your question, how does that affect? Remember I was talking about the three things, biomechanics, biochemistry, and psychophysical, which means emotional. Okay? So psychophysical is the scientific way of describing it. But what basically happens, let's look at biomechanics. Well, you're not really using the muscles that you should be. So they tend to, instead of being a nice dome shape, your diaphragm, it tends to actually flatten. Okay?
Okay.
Which actually means if the diaphragm flattens, then it's going to pull the lungs down. Okay? And it's working off a limited range of motion. So instead of doing this, right, you can imagine it doing that normally. If it flattens out, then it starts doing this. Okay? Which is, yeah, you might say fine, but can you see if you're pumping air in and out of the lungs through that movement, can you see how if you do that, you're not going to get near the amount of air pumping in and out as if you do that?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And so what happens is you end up with these, sorry, the technical names just escaped me, but you end up with space inside your lungs, which should be filled with air that's moving in and out, but it's not. It ends up as kind of like negative space.
Hmm.
And so if you think about that related to performance, well, that's a problem,
It's
because you
a
want to
it's a
get,
huge problem.
it's massive, because especially with surfing and breath holding and all those sort of stuff, like you want to make sure you're getting the air in and out. Like before, if you know that you're about to take a 6-foot set on the head, you want to clear all the air you've got so that you can just take a huge breath in and dive down.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be taking half a little breath. You want to make sure that you got a real nice supple flexibility through that rib cage
Hmm.
and with the diaphragm. If you look at freedivers, they spend ages just doing all these funky exercises just to keep that area really supple, because as you dive down deep, the whole thing gets compressed. So they've got to be super flexible. And I know you do heaps of work on shoulder flexibility and all that sort of stuff for paddling and for dynamic movement. And that's why I'm saying I really like what you're doing, because that's all freeing up the diaphragm, yeah, and freeing up the intercostals and the rib cage to be able to be flexible to get this movement. But you've kind of got to spend some time repatterning that as well. So, that's what I do, spend time with people, actually reteaching them, giving them exercises to get that going.
And what I really enjoyed, I was probably about a year ago, maybe even a little longer, the one course I attended with a client of mine at yours, the day course you did,
Yeah,
is you start
okay.
getting into some of the cellular physiology, and you kind of started to bring it up earlier, but the whole Bohr effect, and then you talked about duck dives or hold downs and stuff. Have you, a slight tangent, have you ever heard of Nam Baldwin of Breath Enhancement Training? He's somewhere up on the coast near you.
Yeah, he's
Um,
just up the road. Yeah.
Great guy. I mean, I think you guys would probably hit it off, good exchange of ideas. But if anybody out there has a chance to either do some work with Colin or Nam Baldwin of Breath Enhancement Training, check it out. Check it out. But one of the things Nam talks about with hold downs is you need to be able to breathe efficiently in the first place. So proper diaphragmatic breathing, right? Because if your normal breath pattern is this, that's what you're talking about. That's a backup system. It's not functional. So if it's your natural instinct, you're about to cop, 6, 8 foot thing on the head, and your natural instinct is to come here, you're already setting off all this heightened stress patterns in the body, you know, all this fight or flight response. So for hold downs, you need to be able to quickly expel air efficiently and then quickly get it in, big deep breath, quickly, efficiently, and then go zen, right?
Exactly.
So go zen as long as possible. Um, do you want to, actually, I'd like to hear a quick explanation on your part of the Bohr effect and CO2, oxygen cellular exchange, because this will have importance for people with exercise and just cellular health.
Mhm. You sort of led me into like one of my massively favorite areas though,
Then go for it, man. Go down the rabbit hole. Let's hear
which
it.
which is one of my, and I'll come back and I'll try and link the carbon dioxide thing into it.
All right.
So we have uh, the easy way into this. So you know how you talked about the fight flight response?
Yes.
So that's when we get a shock and we just go like, the way I describe it to it as a kid, to the kids, like I get them to give me a fright and I go, okay. So we get a fright, it changes our breathing. Okay. So what that's obviously doing is it's getting us to breathe ready to run away from something that's scaring us. It's a little hard to do in the surf, but part of that reaction is triggering off the cranial nerve response. So for people watching, all along your brain, we've got 12 on one side, 12 on the other side of these specialized nerves that really basically control things from here upwards. Okay? So 11 out of the 12 work on things up here. So that's like when you get a fright, your eyes widen, your jaw tenses. You know, you were talking about jaw tension before. Your neck
Yeah.
kind of goes, it doesn't sort of go like this. Your neck goes like that. Okay. Your hearing becomes more acute. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in this area because this area is critical to positioning our body. So if this area here is not functioning on high alert when you're trying to run away from something, there's a whole bunch of things that could happen if you can't see where you're going or whatever. You know, it's real critical to positioning. But then there's this one nerve that comes out the back of the brainstem that actually goes past the neck, okay? The vagus nerve, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So the vagus nerve has an effect on heart rate, on breathing, and also right the way down to your digestion, okay? So I'm kind of really into the vagus nerve at the moment. And what happens is, the way that it works is, in a nutshell, when you get a fright, there's kind of like 3 stages to it. The first stage is basically like a reptilian response where we freeze and die. So you know, like possum in the headlights,
Yeah.
you know, like or deer. Sorry, we'll make it North Hemisphere. Deer in the headlights.
You know, it's funny though. Our
It's like,
possums in America do it too, man. Our possums in America are gnarly looking. They're not like Aussie possums, but they'll freeze in headlights too. But keep going, man.
oh, sick. I didn't know you had possums.
They
But
look like giant rats, literally
yeah,
giant feral rats. But anyways, let's continue.
okay. But anyway, that's that freeze response, right? And the reptilian response to that is actually to die. Yeah, but it's like the deer in the headlights, it's so frozen with fear it can't move out of the way of the thing that's going to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we actually have that in as a sort of like the first layer in our vagal nerve, that we actually can have that. I don't know if you've had that before, where people, or you've seen that where people just freeze with fear. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, yeah. And then you've got the second layer, which is the fight or flight. So that's when you'll get that activation, that hyperarousal. You'll get that the breathing quickens, the heart rate speeds up, the breathing comes shallower, you start to hyperventilate. Yeah.
Mm.
And then the next layer of the vagal, and what happens, sorry, at that point, in a nutshell, what happens in those first 2 layers is that the vagus nerve actually switches off the side or the part of our neural response which allows us to relax. So in technical terms, what's happening is it's inhibiting the parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic's the rest, digest, relax. It's the opposite to this. It's like the, oh yeah, and sit down and just sit on the beach and chill. You know, that's parasympathetic. So what's happening is the vagus actually controls how much of that is allowed to be operating and playing out in the physiology. Does that make sense?
Total sense.
Yeah. And so
I
the
nerd out
last
on the
layer,
physiology.
yeah, the last layer of this vagus response is the part that relates to opening up the parasympathetic and opening up the relaxation. And what actually creates that is connection and things like compassion and gratitude. So like what we kind of did at the start, you know, you said you liked what I do and I said I liked what you do, and that wasn't just for the listeners, like that was actually genuine. And it created a dialogue between us that opened up a trust, you know. So even though like I might be a little bit like not worked up, but you know, psyched to do this, I'm not exactly fully relaxed because I'm doing a webinar, you know. But there's really a connection there between us that allows us to relax into and talk about what we're doing, okay? And so what happens is, to take it right back, that 6-foot set's about to crash on your head, you've actually got to be really happy that it's about to happen, yeah? And you've still got to do all your physiology. Yeah, and gratitude and connection to being, you know, how cool is it to be out here and having this, and wow, man, that thing's just flowing me around everywhere. This is so much fun, you know, and that actually stops the inhibition of the relaxation part. It stops firing. I lost my way. It stops the inhibition of the parasympathetic, and you can actually allow yourself to relax. So instead of, because if you get pinned down and you're scared, it's really bad if you're like this, but even if you're in that state, you can't oxygenate efficiently, and you can't, and your brainstem's fighting for a breath. Okay, so to bring it to the CO2 thing, in a nutshell, you've got cells, we've all got cells, some 6 trillion cells we're made of, and they're just at a really basic level, they're taking in oxygen and pushing out carbon dioxide. And so what happens is that carbon dioxide goes into the blood and it bonds with the water in the blood, joins with the water in the blood and creates an acid. And that acid creates a shift in the pH of blood. Okay. Now that shift in the pH of blood is detected, and it's by the brain. I won't go into the whole physiology of it, but it's kind of really interesting to learn, because then when you do learn it, you can start to manipulate it and control it in yourself when you understand the processes of it. But basically, put it this way, that the more carbon dioxide there is, the more the pH shifts down to acidic, and that actually drives breathing. Okay, so if I'm working really hard with my body, my muscles are working, they're pumping out CO2, it's lowering the pH in my blood, okay? That's picked up by the brainstem, and then the body has the brainstem that controls breathing, which is the reflexive part that controls breathing, starts breathing faster to get rid of the carbon dioxide.
Right.
Because too much will poison you. Too little is a problem too, which I'll get to. But so you start breathing out, and then what happens is your pH will then regulate. Yeah. So your breathing's a big regulator of acidity and alkalinity in the blood. But if you overbreathe, if you breathe out too fast and too much or through your mouth, i.e. hyperventilate, what happens is, because you're getting rid of the carbon dioxide getting rid of too much carbon dioxide, your pH will actually shift the other way. You'll alkalize your blood. Okay. Now the reason this is so important is because acidity is what unlocks, or the acid shift, which you're talking about with the bore, is what will unlock the oxygen from the hemoglobin, from the blood. Okay. The way I describe the kids, and a good way to think of it, it's like your oxygen and your blood are joined, and then they hit the acid, and it's like a key and it unlocks it. So here's the thing: if you're hyperventilating through fear when you're about to try and duck dive that 6-foot wave, okay, you actually limit your body's capacity to uptake the oxygen.
Perfect sense. So I'm going to do a quick recap, man. The so Bohr effect for fourth grade science class, the understanding is this, that there needs to be certain levels of CO2 in your blood to affect the pH, which then will result in oxygen cellular exchange. And so if people are hyperventilating, they just finally paddle out the back again, they've just caught the waves, or maybe they're in the gym and they just did some heavy like circuit training style stuff. That if, yeah, there's a buildup of CO2 because there's exertion, but if it's just excessive chest and excessive exhalation the whole time, they will be limiting their cellular uptake of oxygen. So if you're trying to recover from some type of bout of exercise, it would be best to then start doing some type of breath regulation to perhaps limit some of the exhalation of CO2 at certain times to keep that balance right. Is that at all on par, man? You agree with some of those statements?
Yeah. What I usually get people to do is actually work on their breathing when they're at rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then what plays out, because it sort of comes back down to the control systems of breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, breathing can be voluntary, like what you're talking about there, and you can do that. It can be under the control of the brainstem, which has the inputs from the blood and the pH, and also from the limbic emotional system. You can have inputs from the fear response.
Yes.
And also from stretch reflex stuff, like when you got something lodged or you're going to have a spew or something, that changes your breathing too. Like you get responses from the stretch reflex receptors and stuff. But what we're really talking about here is voluntary versus involuntary control and regulation of your biochemistry in order to facilitate maximum oxygen. And what I would say is, if you understand the theory of it and like you've had that explained, and that's really what I try and do. I try and give people information in a way that they understand so that they can be empowered when they're in the gym to make those decisions.
Right.
But generally in exercise, I actually let the body deal with it itself because it actually knows best, because it's got major readings on pH and oxygen and CO2 levels and all the other bits and pieces on inputs through the brainstem and stuff. So the body actually knows what it's doing if we let it, provided we've given it an environment and a training where it's close as we can get it to physiologically ideal. Does that make sense?
No, total sense, man. Like, there's no reason to try to regulate your breathing if you don't have a proper breath pattern in the first place. So if your rest response is still breathing here, that's clearly inefficient. So why teach somebody proper breathing mechanics to recover from some heavy deadlift kettlebell swing superset thing if they don't have the fundamental at rest, sitting or laying on your back proper breathing pattern? Yeah, that makes total sense, man. So what's like a basic two major things that the average person that you kind of find yourself often explaining to clients? What's two major things somebody could start implementing in terms of breath work and improving the way they breathe?
Number one, man, is like there's that whole thing of as you breathe in, you got to push your belly out. People have that misconception. And that's what I find. I find particularly with adults, people get what I call a learned breathing pattern. So it's something they've been working on. They've learned it in yoga class or Pilates, even worse. But then they really try and breathe in and push their tummy out, or they try and breathe in and suck their belly in and all this sort of stuff. And all it is just allowing yourself to soften and open, I say. Okay, so as you breathe in, you don't want to try and force anything, and you just want to allow your ribs just to open out and expand to the sides, actually. And when it does that, the diaphragm will have space, and it'll just naturally push down, and it will just naturally let your tummy come forward a little. But so softening, just practicing lying on your back, knees bent, feet flat on the floor, lying on your back, and just allowing your body to soften and open through that diaphragm. That's a really good little piece just to practice, okay? And just sort of forgetting the stuff that you already know or you've learned, or you've got to push this or hold this still and all that. Like I said, your body's got an intuitive wisdom. It'll figure it out. Just give it the right environment. Yeah. So getting rid of learned breathing patterns. And then the next thing to do is, like, one of the things that I was thinking would be good today to learn is just to get a little bit of diaphragm control. And at the same time, this exercise is really good to practice having a little bit of extra CO2. So I got my phone here. We can use that for the stopwatch, right?
All right, cool.
So we'll go through it. I'll test you. This is a little bit of a test exercise, and it's also a little bit of a training exercise. Okay.
Okay.
I got my stopwatch. All right. And what we'll do is we're just going to take a reasonable breath in. Okay. And the idea is, as soon as we take that breath in, you'll start breathing out. When you start breathing out, I'll start the clock running. Oops.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So should I tell you when I exhale?
Not yet. Don't do it yet. I'll explain
Okay.
it first. Everyone that's watching in, we can all do it together. And
Okay.
so then, as you start the clock, you're going to breathe out, but you're going to breathe out as slowly as you possibly can. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, Chris, and everyone else who's into Spocky exercise stuff, we're actually doing an eccentric contraction of the diaphragm. We're contracting it as it's getting longer. Okay. So you're going to breathe out as slowly as you possibly can, and then you'll run out of breath eventually, and then you're going to hold your breath as long as you can. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when you can't hold your breath anymore and you need to breathe in, then you breathe in. Just put your hand up, and I'll know then. As soon as you breathe in, I'll know to stop the clock.
All right, man.
48 seconds. You get that?
Got it.
Okay. It's a contest. Now, if I beat you, you have to do 10 push-ups, and if you beat me, I have to do 3. Okay, you ready?
Ready, man.
All right, go. Breathe in. And start. This makes for great viewing. Good. Dude, I was still breathing out.
I stopped. Oh shit!
Yep.
No. I totally fucked it up, man. I could. I raised my hand when I stopped breathing out. I probably could have held my breath for a while longer, so it doesn't even count.
Man, you would have got a good score. All right. So
what was I at, man?
that's enough to do it.
I've worked on those before. Because after with your class and doing some breath work with Nam Baldwin, I've worked on some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So what does that show? Like, what's a good number score on there?
So you should be able to get like at least 45 seconds to a
Okay.
minute of your total breath out and breath hold. You know, the total. And if you can't get that, what it could be indicating, it's not like a solid diagnostic test, but it could be indicating that you're actually running a little low on carbon dioxide. Because what happens is your brainstem gets really sensitive to carbon dioxide if you run low on it. It's kind of like running low on your bank account. You kind of get a bit sensitive about where and how much money you got to spend. You know what I mean? Yeah. I call it the carbon dioxide bank account so kids can understand it. But you get this sensitivity in your body as oh, it's getting low, we'll have to breathe. So it actually can trigger hyperventilation, which actually makes it worse because you're breathing out more carbon dioxide. So if you get a low score on that, which yours was good, by the way, but if you get a low score on that, it can show you that you could actually benefit from some exercises that are going to increase carbon dioxide and actually retrain your brainstem to breathe slower. And if you retrain your brainstem to breathe slower, you'll become more parasympathetic, you'll be more relaxed, you'll feel better in yourself, you'll perform better, and also you'll be able to hold your breath longer. Because one of the tricks of the exercise is not looking at the clock. Yeah, it's like letting yourself be really relaxed. Like Zen,
Being
as
one
you'd
with
say.
yourself, huh? Acceptance. Zen acceptance. No, I think that's all
Yeah, I
solid,
don't know
man.
about those things, but
um, I've got really no more questions personally. Is there anything else in terms of what we've been discussing that you want to relay to people?
how many days have we got for this?
Oh man. Well, okay, so Dave, let's say when's your next seminar? You've got something coming up in Sydney, don't you?
Yeah, that's on Saturday, this Saturday. Um, that is stress, anxiety, and breathing. So we're actually going to go in and talk about that whole piece I was talking about with the vagus nerve
Mm.
and how that relates to the stress response and how to manipulate it. So this is what I'd leave your, this you and the people watching this with. And this is something I learned by watching a webinar myself, the same sort of stuff. That the way to stop that stress response, okay, the best way to use breathing, actually, the guy was asked the question, if you could change 2 billion people on this planet, this guy's a like high level professor in psychiatry, and they said, if you could change, 2 billion people on this planet and tip them so that they, really changed and got in themselves, what would it be? And his answer was, well, breathing. And I'm just like, yes. um,
Validation.
yeah, but what he said was actually the thing that shuts down this stress response is a long exhale.
Oh
So
yeah.
what I tell people to do, like I coach kids to do this. Does your brother or sister pick on you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. When your brother or sister picks on you, this is what I want you to do. I want you to breathe in a nice diaphragm breath. And then I want you to breathe out for the count of 8 through your nose. It's got to be through your nose, not your mouth. Then breathe in just naturally. And again. And you do that 3 times and then thump your sister, okay? But what you'll find is they won't want to thump their sister. Or what you'll find is if it's because someone cut you off in traffic or dropped in on you or you missed a wave or, you're pissed because you can't lift what you want to lift or you've got an injury or something like that. Let's think about that. Let's just take this as a take home. Let's say you've got an injury and it's bugging you and you can't surf and you get frustrated. What's that going to do? It's going to make you more tense through here. It's going to make your breathing shallow. You're going to be doing this. What's that going to do? Tighten up all the muscles around your neck and shoulder, make your shoulder worse. Okay? This sounds counterintuitive, but the moment you've got that injury and you go, oh, I can't surf, that's the time to be super, super grateful for your injury and super compassionate on yourself and kind to yourself. Okay, how can I reframe this? And then you do the breathing. Slow out breath. And it calms the system and tells your body that you're safe. And then you go, well, here's a cool opportunity. I can work this and I can figure out something about my body I didn't know before. And so you've reframed it into something you're grateful for, and then that switches on all your healing systems. You know what I mean? And it regulates your breathing, and it allows
100%, man.
your
And
body and mind to space.
totally, like I know you work with a lot of chronic pain, and I see a lot of chronic pain people, and the chronic pain and chronic health issues, there's an underlying learning possibility there, um, and the whole thing with breathing, it's the quickest way to make a huge influence on the nervous system and calm and get zen. And how many people are go 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 nonstop, stressed out, pissed off, unhappy. Everybody do that 8-second breathing. 3 count, you said, right? 8-second breathing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, the breath stuff.
Exhale.
3 breath, 8 count. 8-second, 3 breath. Cool. Before we wrap up, man, your website, what is it? And I know you work, like you said, a lot with Skype people. What's maybe like 2 clients you've had in the past couple days, so people have an idea of maybe some of the breath work you do with people and why it could have an influence on pain and some offers? What do they need to get in touch with you?
Yeah, offers. Well, because I'm a big fan of you, I'm actually, and I love meeting and connecting with people genuinely, not just because I want it. I've got products to sell, but what I said was on the email to you, I'm really happy. I'd love to just have like a 15 to 30-minute consult. So if people are resonating with this and resonating with want to improve their breathing and their mechanics, whether it's mechanics or they want to understand the biochemistry of oxygen uptake, or they want to look at the psychophysical stuff, just 15 to 30 minutes, you just go to my website and hit, which is 8, the number 8, fold, F-O-L-D, health.com.au. Go on 8foldhealth.com.au and just go to contact and just say you've seen me on Surf Strength Coach, and we'll hook up a Skype chat. If you happen to be on the north coast of New South Wales, we can hook up a live chat in person. I can just add some value, work through that stuff, talk a little bit about what I do, and we'll see if it's a good fit. Further to that, on that website, there's something, if there's been any resonance at all with the coaching aspect of what I was talking about and how that relates to breathing, you can go to the Unique Breathing Blueprint, which is where I go, that's a real deep dive, and it's a really process that works really deep and at a transformation level and includes like a lot of different elements depending on where the person's wanting to go. But it's really about getting in touch with that is breathing you, that which you want to live for. Yeah, so heaps of people, what we were talking about before, stressed out, and they're losing touch with what it is that actually driving them to breathe. You know, what do I want to do with my life force, with my breath, with my being? And that's what the Unique Breathing Blueprint's about, because we all have the same breathing apparatus, you know, this body, but we all use it in different ways.
Mm.
And that whole program, it's 6 months, and it's a big commitment financially and time-wise. But if you go on there and fill out the questionnaire, you've got to jump through that loop. There's a questionnaire related to that page, but we'll sit down for 2 hours for no charge, and we'll just dive in and see what comes out.
Very cool. And not to like, you know, wave friendly flags and stuff, but I've worked with you in the past and you're solid, and I can't stress enough to people out there, get in touch with the man. He knows his stuff solidly, totally supportive of what he's doing. Can you tell us about a child client that you had and why you were maybe working with them? Was it a pain issue? Was it a behavioral issue? And so let's hear one child and one adult, man. What do you got? Some past clients.
Yeah, so, you want an adult case as well?
Yeah, one of each.
Yeah, okay. So I'll give you a really good one. The lady I was just working on with before I came onto this one, she's actually 59 years of age, and when I first met her, she was standing like this, and she had all sorts of pain issues. Okay, now, and she didn't believe in herself. Now she's starting her own business. Okay, she's gone through. She's quit the job that she didn't like. Like, it just happened organically. We worked through the process. We worked through the underlying beliefs. She's now starting her own business, and she's actually starting to express herself through art, which is what she's always wanted to do. And sometimes I sit there and I go, man, I'm 38 and I'm helping you, and you're, 59. I'm just like, I'm so grateful for that. And she's like, no, I'm so grateful for you. Like, there's what I'm saying is what's happened with her, and it started with breathing, and it always comes back to breathing for her. She does her breathing exercise every day, and what's happened to her is a light's being switched on inside. Mm. And it's the same with this kid client, except the results are a little bit more tangible. She couldn't swim barely 25 meters, okay? She constantly had runny noses. She was always breathing through her mouth. She was always sick, okay? She couldn't hardly swim 25 meters. 3 months after doing the breathing program, which that was the only intervention because her swim coach was actually away for 2 out of those 3 months, she went to the school carnival. She won the 25-meter freestyle race against squad swimmers and nippers swimmers, so kids that are good swimmers. But she could hardly swim 25 meters, and then she won the 25-meter race. That's the shit I get up for in the morning. That's what drives me. I love that stuff.
Impacting other people, man, for a positive like result. It's very cool. Um,
Mm.
any lasting comments, man? What'd you have for breakfast? I always ask people that when I webinar them. What'd you have for breakfast?
Uh, I had bacon, an egg, and an apple.
Solid breakfast. What did I have? That was like what, about 12 hours ago. This is how shot my memory is nowadays. I had eggs, chicken sausage with an apple as well, and some orange juice and gelatin powder. That was my breakfast. Cool.
Yeah,
Um,
you're all over it, man.
I have really casual mornings, dude. Like I'm able to like take my time and like totally casual. Um, but cool. Again, thanks for taking the time to have a chat, dude. Everybody out there, eightfoldhealth.com.au. Get in touch with Colin, and thanks a lot, man. People, I'm sure, get in touch with either of us if you've got questions, and reach out to Colin. And cheers, dude. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for watching. And yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. It's been awesome.
100%, man. And for everybody out there, work on your breathing. It's hugely relevant, and improve the way you move so you can do what you want in life. Peace.